Going on, everyone? Welcome, Rabid here. I don't know about you guys, but I am pretty excited to finally build a CPU mining rig. It's been quite some time. Yeah, we built a lot in the past, but this one is going to be a beast. So here we can see the X870 Aurorus Elite Wi-Fi ICE. That states that this is an all-white motherboard. And for the CPU, we're going to be matching this up with the brand new Ryzen 9950 X3D. So no, this is not a Rabid branded motherboard. I recently just got my stickers in today. As we can see right here, we got a bunch of stickers. This is not stuck here. I just put it there just because. But yeah, we got my stickers in, so that is awesome. So, you know, I did sell a bunch of hardware and stuff. Stickers finally came in, so now I can actually box everything up, start shipping them out, and send stickers with each of all the orders there. So congratulations to everyone who did purchase those. Stickers are ready, so shipping will begin very soon. Now, moving forward, let's start building this rig. Now, this is not going to be a dedicated CPU mining rig. That's why I do have the X870. You know, I'd use a much cheaper motherboard when it comes to dedicated mining rigs for any platform. This is actually going to be a new workstation build. Once I'm done testing all the hash rates, I have an all-white build I want to put together with the latest Be Quiet Pro 901 case. It's a huge white case, so it's going to be fun when I'm done all this. But first, I need to get this together and test some hash rates and stuff. All right, so here is the motherboard in a nutshell, nice and white looking. Another nice thing about this, it's pretty much toolless, unless you got to change your cooler bracket stuff around. Obviously, you're going to need a screwdriver for that. But when it comes to your M2 drive and everything, you can see right here, this plate, it's just a simple click right here. Then lift this up and bam, there they are. And they're all nicely labeled. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but it'll say Gen 5, Gen 4 and stuff on them, so you don't get them confused with the generation. And then we just simply put that back. Kind of hard with one hand here, but it should go in pretty easily. If I can just line it up. Let me just give me a second here. There we go. You know, one hand operation is kind of a pain, but you can see it's nice and easy. Two hands, you can get in and out there in like half a second. As for the BIOS, I'm not 100% sure which one this came with. I wouldn't know until I actually put everything together, fire it up, and look. So I'm actually going to do the Q flash, which means you can actually flash these motherboards without any CPU. All you got to do is hook up the power and then plug in the drive with the BIOS on the side, and you can update it that way. So I'm going to probably make that as a separate video, and I'll continue on from here with the BIOS flash ready to go and then continue on with the installation. Alright, so I am done updating the BIOS. I will release that video sometime here. And just for a brief, you know, quick run through, QFlash Plus, you can do this and update your BIOS without needing any CPU or anything. Just a 24-pin and a CPU power cable, and you're good to go. Alright, so continuing on with the build here, the first thing I do want to do is check out our pins. You do want to make sure no pins are bent. So I'm simply going to unlock this, flip up our little latch here. If I can get my fingers in here, it's kind of hard to see through the camera, so that sucks. There we go. Oh, a little shaky. Alright, so here is our pins, and you're just going to want to go through and examine everything. Alright, once you're done with that, you're going to want to examine your CPU. It's looking pretty good here, and on the top right you see an arrow, and then you flip it over, the arrows on the same side. That will match up on your motherboard to the arrow in the top left corner there. And then place your CPU in. There's also a couple notches right here and right here, so it does line up perfectly. You will know if you are putting it in the wrong way. It just won't sit down. So everything is good. We're going to close this latch here. A little on the shaky side, so that sucks. And then we're going to close this one here, and we're going to lock it down. Bam! And this should pop off. There we go. Our CPU is now installed. Alright, so next I am going to install my hard drive, the M2 here for Hive OS before I do forget. Sometimes I do that, so I'm going to get it done right away. So it's going to be a simple process. We're just going to pull this off like so. Now I'm going to remain the plastic and stuff on it for now until I do put this in my workstation because, you know, I'm just going to be testing and stuff, so it should be quick. Hopefully nothing melts, but I guess we'll see here. And I'm actually going to use this in this PCI lane right here. So I'm just going to put that in like so. Put that in there. There we go. Now we're going to put this down. Push this to the side of my finger like that. Put it down. Bam, it's in. So you can see I didn't even need tools for that. Nice and simple. Now let's see if I get a second shot at this, if I'm going to be any better at it. So I'm just going to kind of line this up. And no, I failed. Oh, there we go. That was a little better, I guess. Move this to the side. Drops in. And we are good. Nice, nice. Now as here, we're not going to be using a GPU for this because it does have integrated graphics. But if you're curious, it might look like a pain to push this down if you ever have to remove a GPU. Something as big as a 4090 or even a 5090 would be a pain. But that's where this button right here comes in. You push that and it actually pushes this down and you can pull your GPU out nice and easy. All right, so I did install my RAM here. This is DDR5 RAM, 6000 megahertz. And an easy way to remember which way it goes is the label is actually facing out. So the branding, which we can see here, is facing out away from the CPU. I also have some 8000 megahertz RAM right here, which if it focuses, you can see. There we go. So there you can see 8000 megahertz. So I'm going to try that when I get into my testing process and see if I can get that to work. Hardware on box did show that his stress testing only worked up to 7400 megahertz. So we might have to kind of, you know, tweak it a little bit to that. But we'll see what happens when we get to the testing part, when we start testing out the CPU and motherboard. But right now, RAM is in. We're in slot A2 and B2. If you're only running 2 sticks of RAM, these are the 2 slots you are going to have to use in order to get your full dual channel. All right, so next I am going to have to apply some thermal paste, remove the brackets, the original AM5 brackets here for your stock coolers. Not in that order though, I'm going to do that before the thermal paste, and install the CPU cooler, which is this guy right here. This is a premium CPU air cooler, the Assassin Spirit 120 Evo from Thermalright. It's a nice like $30 Canadian cooler, works very good for CPU mining and doesn't cost very much at all. Obviously this is black, doesn't match my white, so I will be changing out when I put it in my workstation to the Be Quiet Light Loop White 360 millimeter AIO will be for the white build once it does become the workstation. So to install these coolers, it's pretty simple here. I remove the brackets here and then I put these risers over top the thread hole. So I'm just going to pull this one out so you can see. There is where the original bracket was kind of screwed into. Now I just put these over top. And then from here, I'm just going to take these brackets now and I'm going to screw them down into here, and that will be our base for our cooler. All right, so that's what our base will look like. We can see we clamped it down here, or screwed it in, clamped it down. You know, they're tight now on all 4 corners here, and our cooler will sit over top like this and screwed in through the middle right here. But first, we got to get that thermal paste on, as well as look at our cooler here. You are going to want to make sure you remove the sticker that is on there. You don't want that plastic in there because it will melt. A CPU can get very hot. All right, so there is my thermal paste job. Not the prettiest, but definitely not the worst job I've ever done either. So I put it right across the middle there, and I am using Noctua NTH1, which doesn't want to focus, but Noctua thermal paste here. This is pretty much what I've always used. It's never done me wrong, and it seems to last pretty much forever. All right, so our cooler is now installed. Everything is looking good. Now, when installing a cooler, be sure to make sure, I'm going to turn this up a bit, that is pretty black, so get the light a little brighter. So make sure you do even a couple turns on each side, keep going back and forth so it does sit down and press firmly and evenly over that thermal paste for a nice even spread. So now all we really got to do is plug in our power cables here. I got to get an HDMI cable and get that ran into here so we can see a keyboard, and also our power switch we're going to have to get in here, because the first time you turn on any motherboard, you do need a power switch until you get into the BIOS and turn in restore power after AC loss and turn that on. All right, so we are up and running. It's also really nice that they had, you know, where everything is are kind of highlighted right here. Some motherboards you actually have to go into the manual, which is online, to figure out where that is, but it was nicely pointed out on the board. We got some lights under here, so that's cool. But fan is spinning, everything's going, everything is looking pretty nice. Now, one thing I do want to point out, when it does come to these Thermalrights, I'm going to turn on my light for a second. There we go. The fans on these do suck. I'm using about 6 to 8 of these coolers, and I think I've had about 4 fans fail already. So it is nice to have a backup fan, but these things are very cheap coolers, and they work very well. But the downside is their fan does like to quit. you know, after about 4 or 5 months. All right, so let's have a look at this BIOS, and it's looking pretty nice. As we can see, it is all white just to match the motherboard as well. But we can see the 9950X3D 16-core processor. I am on the latest BIOS according to their website, which is F4 stable, so everything is looking nice here. All right, so just looking at a few things, it looks like we can add our XMP right from the main window instead of going into advanced settings here. So I'm just going to put in Expo 2. And yes, I do want high bandwidth support, so I'm going to turn that on. There's some X3D turbo mode and stuff up top here. I'm not 100% sure what that does. You know, I got a lot of testing to do for this thing, but I got to find the advanced menu, which is usually F7 or something. So let's just see here. No, F7 is low defaults. Maybe it's F2. There we go, it's F2. So we're going to come in, and it does look like, can we adjust? So with these CPUs, these X3Ds are supposed to be the first ever where you can actually adjust your core voltages and stuff. So I just want to see if we can manually tune this. I'm just going to start off with your normal PBO stuff, which is your negative curves and everything. But I am curious about the core here we go, core voltage right here. Oh yes, we do have the option to do that. So, you know, watch your X3D. I don't know if there's any safety limits, but they will melt fairly easy compared to other ones. It sounds like ASRock is up to no good again with melting CPUs right out of the gates on auto. So stay away from ASRock until they fix that. That was their issue with early 7000 series as well. So I do like Gigabyte for that very thing. Now I don't see where I can adjust my actual CPU clocks here. Oh, right here, CPU clock ratio. Oh yeah, yes, awesome. We have that ability. So everything is here like manual, but I'm going to adjust everything so that we do this like we normally would. So I'm going to come in, platform power. So here's where you do your power loading and AC back on and everything. I'm leaving this off because it's eventually just going to be my workstation. So I'm not going to have it to turn off and on without a power switch. So I'm not going to do anything there. But I'm going to come in, we're going to go into AMD overclocking. Yes, I accept that 100%. Now I'm going to come in, eco mode I do want on, so I'm going to turn on eco mode. Now there's two eco modes that I don't remember which one works. And it seems like if you ever set a CPU offset or a manual clock speed, it will overwrite eco mode and it won't run in eco mode. At least that's what I found on the 7950X. So I don't know if it's the same thing here. I need a lot of testing, but I'm going to go into precision boost overdrive here. We're going to go into advanced mode. And then I'm going to come in, we're going to go down to change this over. Where are we at? Curve optimizer. We're going to enable all cores. We're going to set a negative. And I'm going to start with something like, I guess, negative 30. Oop, that's 39. Negative 30. So negative 30 is what I'm going to run for that for now. Go back in just to make sure it's there. Yes, it is. GFX. Nope, nothing to do there. CPU override, PBO limits. So I'm not going to set none of this stuff here. I'm going to look for some more settings here. Maybe I do got to adjust eco mode there. I thought there was another spot for it. Like I said, it's been a while since I was here. Oh, so this isn't the one. So that's not the one I want. I don't want that auto one. I want the one I'm actually looking for. There is a different spot here for this. All right, so if I actually leave here, get out of there. So it might be in, let's try AMD CBS. Oh, there we go, SMU. So we want to come into here. Here is our eco mode. You can see it's disabled. So now I'm going to enable eco mode. And I think I'm good for now. So I'm just going to let it all boot up into Hive OS, and I'll just kind of take it from there. All right, guys, so that pretty much does wrap up this video. The build is complete. Next up, I gotta get to testing, but I am having one pretty large issue currently. So I went into Hive OS. It is reading everything. It booted up and everything, but I don't think I'm getting internet because it's not showing up at Hive OS. But if you actually go into here through the HDMI, you can see it did load the operating system. It's reading the drive and everything, but I'm not getting internet through the LAN cable. I tried both the stable version and the beta version. So I'm going to have to look into some other things, but there could be a chance that this is DOA on the LAN port. So I'm going to look into it more and see if I can find a fix for that, but so far I haven't. All right, so before we actually go, a quick update. I did get the internet to work here, as you can see, with a USB plug to a LAN port or DLO right here. So this is actually working now, and it is detected in Hive OS. So Keaton also got back to me about Hive OS, and he says it needs a newer kernel than what's currently in Hive OS. So that's what the issue is. It needs newer tech and stuff as well to get that LAN port to work, but for now this does seem to work when it does come to Hive OS. Now it's over. See you later. Thanks for coming. Hit that subscribe button, share it around. Rabid out.